I'm Melanie Katz, and this is KZSC News. The uncertainty of COVID-19 creates added challenges to the student housing crisis. Today, we have two stories on how COVID has shaken things up for college student housing in the state and at UC Santa Cruz. In our feature story, Adelaide Carlson of KZSC News will talk to UCSC Chancellor Cynthia Larive about what's in store for student housing in the fall. But our first story comes from California News Service. In it, a coalition of student-led organizations from across California is advocating for better housing options during the COVID crisis.
Student leaders are calling on college administrators to coordinate a COVID-19 plan to help students across the state. The California Students Higher Education Advocacy Roundtable, or HART, outlined its priorities in a letter this week to the UC, CSU, and community college system. The group is asking that campus services remain open whenever possible for students who have nowhere else to go. They're advocating for emergency cash grants to alleviate food insecurity. According to the latest survey at UCSC, 48% of undergraduates and 31% of graduate students experience food insecurity. HART is asking campuses to waive fees for breaking on-campus leases and work with local landlords to allow students ample time to handle missed rent payments. The group asks that campuses provide paid leave to students with on-campus jobs. And since undocumented students will not receive CARES Act funding, HART is asking the university to keep such students updated on the types of aid available to them. Finally, they want to make sure that uninsured students can still access on-campus health services. Valerie Johnson, Transfer Students Affairs Officer, and a student at UC Berkeley, says lawmakers should make sure the federal CARES Act money goes to actually help students, and then to protect college and university budgets going forward.
One thing that the legislature can do is continue to fund our colleges at the highest capacity possible so that students aren't seeing what they saw during the last time there was an economic downturn and the costs of colleges doubling or tripling.
UC Santa Cruz has received $19.3 million from the CARES Act. Chancellor Larive elaborated on what UC Santa Cruz will do with the funding.
There has been funding allocated to universities. Our share of that was just shy of $20 million. About half of that will go directly to students to support students, and a whole working group has been working on how to get that money out to students.
The remainder of the funding will be used to mitigate costs associated with the transition to remote instruction. It will also be used to supplement a loss of revenue associated with housing.
A housing shakeup could be on tap for the fall in Santa Cruz. Fewer UC Santa Cruz students could be returning to the city because of COVID-19. Online classes could take the place of most in-person classes on campus, and new housing rules could make dorm rooms for 2 or 3 people into rooms for just 1 person. Janet Napolitano, the University of California president, talked about the potential housing changes at a Commonwealth Club event. It was held online in April.
What the fall term will look like, and indeed what the entire academic year will look like. It's possible that we will remain online through the fall. We normally have doubles and sometimes triples in our dorms. I think that's unlikely.
UC Santa Cruz normally has about 9,000 undergraduates housed on campus and roughly 9,000 students who live off campus. If roommates in dorms were not allowed because of COVID, if every dorm were a single, that would mean less than half the normal number of students on campus, or about 4,000 students. That's according to UCSC Chancellor Cynthia Larive. KZSC News spoke to Larive last week.
While pivoting to remote instruction gets the headlines, I think it's important to note that this pandemic has really shifted the ground underneath our most basic university operations, things like housing and dining and transportation, janitorial work, admissions, counseling, and even fundraising. every corner of the university has been impacted.
University officials are still deciding what to do about housing in the fall. Here's UCSC Chancellor Cynthia Larive again.
I think it's clear to me that we won't be able to have housing at the level that we had last year in the fall. And so as we think about that, we will have to make some changes likely to the kinds of housing guarantees that we're able to offer.
There are about 1,100 students left on campus this spring. They have been concentrated in single dorms in colleges 9 and 10 and in family student housing. Larive said one thing that is not changing is the number of first-year students admitted to UCSC for fall 2020. Admissions letters went out in the spring as the COVID pandemic unraveled, Larive said. Although many classes could remain online only in the fall, some students could return for classes that involve laboratory work, field studies, or studio and performing arts. So it's not clear how many students will return to live on or off campus. A third-year UCSC psychology major, Gal Al-Kayam, said she wasn't sure how her housing situation would unfold.
We're kind of in like a weird limbo with coronavirus because like a lot of us do want to go back by like mid to end of May. And yeah, a lot of my housemates, including me, have decided not to go back to Santa Cruz. Yeah, a lot of us are just throwing our rent down the drain at the moment because there's also not too many subleasers looking to take over the rent.
Landlords in Santa Cruz also face some uncertainty. Fewer UCSC students might return to rentals in Santa Cruz in the fall, yet some new students might be forced to live off campus if the number of dorm rooms is cut in half. Laura Kruger is a landlord who rents more than 80 units in Santa Cruz County and San Jose.
I'm a mother, and I know that although my daughter isn't in college right now, I probably wouldn't feel comfortable sending her back to a dorm. But if I'm a parent and I'm saying, wow, you can share a room with one person and a bathroom with one person, you're not going to the cafeteria, maybe I want you in a house instead of on campus.
Another part of the housing shakeup in the fall might be students' ability to pay rent. Paying the rent could also be an issue for some who have lost work. Kruger encouraged students who might have trouble paying rent to negotiate with their landlord.
Your landlord is, a human being. They're another person who's going through this just like you are. And for the most part, in my experience, they're reasonable people. So when you have an issue, whether it's for COVID or anything, communication is the best tool that you have. I think a lot of times what I see with students is maybe there's an intimidation or maybe there's not experience and they wait until they have an emergency before they come to communicate. And then we don't have as many tools to work together to find the solution. Talk to your landlord now and see what sort of opportunities they have for you, because you may be able to take one stress off of your shoulders, work with your landlord and have a better, experience come December or January.
Janet Napolitano, the UC president, said she still has hope for campus life getting back to normal, eventually.
I don't see schools like the University of California becoming fully online. And I think that over time, students will be able to return to campuses. There is so much value to that overall in-person student experience, in addition to the educational life, the social life of the campus. It's an opportunity for young people to experience living away from home, many for the first time. And it's a terrific growth experience.
A decision on UCSC campus housing for the fall is expected to be announced in June. I'm Adelaide Carlson. This has been KZSC News. Melanie Katz, Katya Damian, Stephen Baxter, and Keith Rosendahl helped produce this story.